Good evening. Well, I hope you enjoyed tonight's screening of Finding Jack Charlton. I'm sure you'll agree, a brilliant film about a brilliant and beloved man. It also rounded off our Donate for Dementia week here on Virgin Media Television, where we've been raising much-needed funds on behalf of the Alzheimer's Society of Ireland. If you haven't had a chance to donate yet, it's very easy. Just text MEMORY to 50300 to donate €4 to help with the care and research into a condition that touches all of us in some way. Now, of course, it's also been a chance to indulge in a little bit of nostalgia about the days when we were all part of Jackie's army. Lots of stories about Jack and that incredible journey coming up from some of those who were there, including the man beside me, Niall Quinn, who chipped in with a few rather important goals along the way. Niall, great to have you with us. We'll hear from some more of the lads shortly. Just watching the film, though, it was very poignant and very moving and emotional at times. What was it like for you to watch it as someone who was there and who was in it?
Well, I had been interviewed for it, so I was looking forward to it coming out. I was told it was pretty emotional, and my wife and I decided there one of the nights through lockdown that we'd get a bottle of wine, sit down and watch this together, and we were quite pleased at the start and going, oh, this looks good. But then there were times during it when, you know, I found Gillian was squeezing my hand and we were holding tears back, the two of us, because Jack had a huge impact, not just as a football manager for me, but as a father figure. And his way and his mannerisms, the way he brought your family into everything, you know, they were able to come out and eat with you at the get-togethers, and his family were always there. And it came home. The loss of Jack Charlton really struck me during the programme, and obviously how it all happened was tough. And yeah, so I would say that it was uncomfortable at times, yeah, but absolutely, you know, invigorating in other ways. And I remember ringing Andy Townsend afterwards, straight afterwards, late at night, to say, I have to applaud you, Andy, that you got him. You know, yeah, it was him.
Magnificent piece of work.
Yeah.
It was so poignant to see his wife, Pat, talk about, you know, what a shame it was that he couldn't remember because he had so many memories. When was the last time you saw him?
Well, he came over in autumn 2018 for the last time. The players had a reunion, and it was on the eve of the dinner for Liam Miller down in Cork. So we'd had a weekend together and we raised some funds as a group. It was great to get back together. First time we'd done that as a group, 29 years later, after 1990. But it was a lovely occasion that he came to, and we didn't realise at the time it was the last time probably the majority of us saw him, and we're so grateful that we had that time with him, even though that powerful man with the charisma and the ability to capture a room by just glancing, yeah, wasn't there anymore. You know, it was a man that was unsure of what was around him, but yet, you know, his family who were with him were very grateful of the adoration that was around the place for the couple of days that we were together for him. And I can remember Imelda May singing for him in that particular get-together. And
very special.
Incredible stuff. Yeah, really good. Yeah.
Well, let's hear from one of the men that Niall mentioned there, and one of Jack's captains with the Irish team. Andy Townsend was an executive producer of Finding Jack Charlton, and a good man to try put his finger on just why Jack was the right man at the right time.
He didn't say a lot to me, but then on the bus, on the way to the game, I was sat on the bus, I was looking out the window halfway down the bus, and he got out of his seat at the top and he walked all the way back down towards me and then sat next to me and just reminded me by saying, listen, I know you like to play your tippy-tappy stuff with Norwich. He said, if you do that with me and you give the ball away and we're in trouble because of it, he said, I'll take you off. I'll take you off straight away, right? So he said, don't be taking any liberties with me. And as he said it, he actually wasn't really looking at me. He was just sort of wagging his fingers, and he was still looking down the middle of the bus. You know, message understood loud and clear. So, and again, you know, that's in many respects, when I see a lot of, and over the years, I've watched so many managers that can be a bundle of contradictions and can leave lots of grey areas, and their players play that way. Sometimes players play like a team that looks like it lacks direction and it lacks understanding of what the manager wants them to do. Whereas whatever people say about Jack Charlton, that's something you could never aim at him. You know, everyone knew exactly what he wanted, how he wanted it, when he wanted it, and if he didn't do it, he'd find someone else that would. And that's pretty simple.
How important was that clarity that Jack brought?
Well, it was everything, because he came into a situation that he had looked at beforehand and decided, was a football team that had lots of good players, weren't qualifying for tournaments because they were either overcommitted to going forward or didn't have the craft to deal with, as he used to call them, the number 10s in the other teams who used to destroy Ireland. And he used to talk about it a lot. And he'd say, we're going to find a way that number 10 can't destroy us anymore. And if it means giving them the ball because we've knocked it up at their end of the field and we've brought them back there, that's fine. And I can remember very early on he was always asking one of the two centre forwards, as soon as it looks like we're going to lose the ball, not even when we'd lost it, you've got to run back in and be a fifth midfielder. So you can imagine you're centre forward, you've learned how to be a centre forward, and the ball's coming in, you think, oh, we're going to lose this, I've got to run 25 yards back. And we used to have to sprint. Because, as Andy said, there was always somebody else.
You knew exactly what you had to do.
He'd take you off if you didn't do it, and you wouldn't play again.
OK, let's hear from Ronnie Whelan now. A story about a certain young up-and-coming striker shortly. But Jack's single-mindedness wasn't good news for all Irish players at that time.
It is funny because the first meeting of the first team meet was against Wales. Wales beat us 1-0 in Dublin. Famous for Neville Southall dislocating his ankle in that game. But Jack, in his meeting before the game, he was reading the names backwards. You know, who's this Roisin? And he didn't know that. So that was a precursor of what we were going to get a lot of with Jack down the line. We had good laughs. We were laughing with him. We were never laughing at him. But yeah, as you say, he did come in with some new ideas, a little bit foreign to a couple of the players who were brought up playing football a little bit different than Jack's idea. And a few of us paid a little bit the price, myself, Liam, Dave O'Leary. You know, Jack wasn't exactly, didn't favour us in any way whatsoever. We were the Irish-born players in the squad mostly. Where he had this idea of how he wanted to play international football, and he was not changing his mind, no matter what we tried to do or what we ever said. Jack's way of playing football was Jack's way of playing football, and if you wanted to be part of it, you did it. And if you weren't going to be part of it, you'd get someone else to do it. But you have to say, in the end, it brought great success. There was once where he had this big, long meeting before the game in Lansdowne, and he went on and on and on, but most of it was about Quinny and what Quinny had to do and why Quinny wasn't here, and he had to be in that position, he had to be in that position. And we were all listening to Jack. And then from behind Jack, Quinny come in the door into the dressing room. He hadn't even been in the room, Quinny. Now, I started to laugh, but Jack was in a serious mode at this moment in time. But I was writing his eye line and I started to laugh. And he just went at me, you know, what are you laughing at? What are you laughing at? And I couldn't say, Quinny's just walked in behind you and you've been talking 20 minutes about him.
It wouldn't be like you to be late.
No,
does that ring true?
It does, and I just slid in and sat down at the end of the room. He never noticed the thing, and fair play to Ronnie, he kept it from him. But things like that happen. I mean, people might be shocked and horrified, but it was different. He as much as a dictator of what he wanted to do on the pitch, it was fairly casual when you got together. In fact, it was more than casual. It was like a playground for us all to come in and be part of for the few days that we'd be together, you know. And we'd play Saturday with your team, Wednesday then with the international team, and Saturday again. So it wasn't we never got a week off, but we'd all burst a gut to get over there injured on a Saturday night, and we'd make sure we all got together. He'd let us have a drink if we got in Saturday night. Sunday we'd train. He'd tell us, go rest, go see your family. So we'd generally go to Gibney's and Malahide to do that. and we just, you know, we had such great fun with it all. And then we were winning as well, and we were being successful. And then you come home and meet your teammates who've been away with England, and they go, oh, it's the worst time ever. It's boring. We don't do anything. And we're there going, oh, you want to see the time we have. And I think that played itself out in the spirit of the team and how that connection to the fans was strong, because the fans would see us going for a pint. They'd be happy to see us going for a pint. We were near them. It wasn't as if we had security going everywhere with us like they do today. We did our own thing.
The people.
Of the people. And I think he recognised that and actually encouraged it.
Very quickly, just the point that Ronnie made there, that his ways didn't benefit all players, that some players suffered, the likes of Liam Brady, Ronnie a little bit, as he says, and David O'Leary.
Yeah.
Could the team have been better if he was less dogmatic?
He was so reluctant to put ourselves in danger by giving the ball away when we'd overcommitted. I mean, you see it now today in football, and the gegenpress, as it's named all these years later. Sometimes when teams lose the ball and they get beaten on the break, it's tough. And he didn't want that to happen. But his philosophy was always more geared to when we didn't have the ball. And I think those gifted players on the ball obviously you know, they lost their way in all that because he was so concerned about not conceding and making sure that we were strong, that midfield always had 5 players in it, that they were protected at the back, that what he sacrificed was the type of football that maybe Stephen Kenny is asking his players to do now, where you could thread things in, try and be creative, open things up. And there were football purists were horrified by this, and people who had been the opposite. His teammate, John Giles, for instance, who played a much different game when he was manager of Ireland, they found it hard to like this way of playing. As players, and particularly the way I played, I was a centre forward, was on the receiving end of all the long balls. I accepted it because it was good for me. But there was something difficult, really almost upsetting about watching Liam Brady having to boot a ball at the corner flag, when maybe the weekend before he was doing great things against AC Milan in the best league in the world. And it was...
and it was a big part of the discussion at the time, wasn't it? You know,
It sure was.
Still to come, lots more memories of Jack as we round off Donate for Dementia Week, including the time he tried to teach Paul McGrath how to fly fish.
And he asked me, going into that first game, he says, I want you to roll the ball outside the box and kick it into the corner. And I said, Jack, I've never been outside the box kicking the ball off the ground in my life.
But the fact that everybody loved him.
Probably him trying to teach me how to fly fish.
Jack had I think he had a share in a Harry Ramsden's chip shop or something.
Welcome back. Well, after tonight's screening of Finding Jack Charlton, we are enjoying a few more stories about the great man's time with Ireland. We're also rounding off Donate for Dementia Week on Virgin Media Television. All week we've been raising funds for the Alzheimer's Society of Ireland to help fight a condition that afflicted Jack and so many others, of course. You can still donate. Just text MEMORY to 50300 to donate €4. Niall Quinn with me as we reflect on Jack's impact during those glory years. Let's hear now from Ireland's #1 back then, Packy Boner, on how Jack laid down the law.
He had the ability to almost get inside your brain, and I probably try to describe it to people what type. He was a unique manager. He was different than everybody else in many ways because of maybe the way he dressed. He had that cap, he had the tweed jacket at times, and came in and also I think he created the environment at the very start for us. The environment was like a team. And I keep saying it to people, what he did at the very start, very, very clever, is that, you know, and under one hand, probably Johnny Giles in the past also, the Dublin lads were allowed to go home after training and so on, because they were away. And I understand that because they were away from their families for living over in England. I mean, back in Dublin, they were allowed to go out and see their families. But what that did was created a bit of a divide among us. You know, some of us in the hotel. I was from Donegal, so I didn't have family in Dublin. So I was in with the lads who were, you know, born over in England, and their families were there. So it did create a divide. But Jack did stop that very quickly. You know, he stopped it. No. We do everything together. We do everything. We go train together. We play together. But we also socialise together. We go to the pictures on the cinema on a Monday night, and everybody went. We went clay pigeon shooting, which he loved, and taking us even on the odd time we would probably be in for maybe a week. He might say, well, let's do something. We'll go to the racing.
How important was that togetherness as a squad?
It was everything. It created a strong family atmosphere between us all, and you daren't miss it. You know, you'd hide injuries at your club to get over and be part of it. And I can remember one of the days at the races, clearly, that Packy mentions there, he brought us to Phoenix Park before it closed down. And he brought us up to the great Vincent O'Brien's box, and we went up and met the O'Brien family. And anyway, Vincent O'Brien had a favourite in some big race, and we all backed it. And Jack backed his outsider, which won. And I remember Jack saying, "Did I not tell you? Vincent told me just to back the outsider." We were going, "Jack, what have you done to us?" And we laughed. And on the way home from that race meeting, we were staying in Finstown House out in Lucan, which was in the countryside then. There wasn't a house near it. And as we were approaching the gates at maybe 10 o'clock at night, we all at the back of the bus started singing, "We love you, Jackie, we do." And it got really loud. And in the end, he went, "Are you looking for a pint?" And we were going, "Yeah." And he went, "Find a pub, driver." And we all went, "Yes, there's only one Jackie Charlton." And we went to a pub up on the canal. And we were the only ones in it, really. And we had a big joke-telling session between everyone. We drank 2 or 3 more pints, and we all went to bed and thought, wow, this is like being in a kid's film. It's amazing.
And the scene in the movie at the end of Italia 90 after you've been knocked out where there's a sing-song, it's like watching a family get-together, isn't it?
Yeah, and you must remember it was a tough night because our dreams of winning the whole thing is gone. We started off not knowing really what to do there because it was our first tournament, and by the end of it, you think you have half a chance of winning it. So there was disappointment in the air, and there was a flatness in some ways. It wasn't like a crazy do, but it was almost, we were taking stock, trying to take stock of what had happened, and we got together, had our few drinks. It was lovely to see, actually. I was really pleased when I saw that, because I often wondered, because I knew there was a bit of filming going on. I think UN were doing filming. And to see it all crop up after all these years.
Especially you looking completely cold sober through the whole thing. No, we better move on at that point.
Move on.
No analysis of Jack's methods would be complete without the Harry Ramsden's challenge. Andy Townsend again on the infamous pre-match fish and chips affair.
That again was Jack had I think he had a share in a Harry Ramsden's chip shop or something. Someone probably give him a share in a Harry Ramsden's chip shop, but. Anyway, so there we were playing Austria. Remember it, we were playing Austria the next day. I think in a game we lost at Lansdowne, which was rare. We didn't lose too many. But we all blamed it on a piece of cod about this long inside of each of every one of us, you know, because we're all sitting in this Harry Ramsden's thinking, what are we doing in here the night before a game, you know, eating a monumental piece of fish and a bucket of chips each, you know. And 24 hours later, we couldn't move, you know. So
that was off the wall even for Jack's standards. Was that kind of when things maybe were? This is '95, maybe a bit on the slide in terms of discipline.
Absolutely, yeah. And what had happened that the afternoon that he's talking about there, we'd come up from Limerick. We'd gone down to Limerick to train for a few days. Jack had gone away for a couple of them days, and he left John in charge, his son, who found it very difficult to keep us in Limerick. And we got this bockety old bus up to Dublin, the day before the Austria game. It took ages to get there. The motorway wasn't there then. And it stopped in Ballyfermot. There was some kind of community do in Ballyfermot that Jack had promised to go to. But when we got there, they weren't even expecting us. They didn't think we'd turn up. And I'll never forget this sight. Some of the English lads couldn't believe this. All the kids on the pieballs and the skew ball ponies giving us a guard of honour on the bus as we were going into this community area. And it was an incredible time, really. It was just, you know, we'll get back to the hotel and rest. And it was, no, we're going training. But before we go training, we're bringing you to Harry Ramsden's. And I think Gary Kelly won the challenge. I said, what does the winner get? And it was a double dessert for free. but you can see there, I mean, it's lovely to watch these pictures now, because it was kind of a mournful occasion because we were out of the World Cup.
This was the one after Italia 90, wasn't it?
Yeah, this was after Italia 90, and the heart and feeling that was in the team probably manifests itself in a way there that, you know, there's poor Morris, who we lost as well, in a way that the adventure had come to an end, but we knew something strong had happened.
Yeah, something amazing, yeah. Well, aside from the football, what really came through watching the film was the warmth and decency of Jack. Let's hear from two men who knew that better than most, his captain Mick McCarthy in a moment. But first, Paul McGrath. If you watch the film, you'll know he had a very special relationship with Jack, so I asked him for a memory that sticks out.
Probably him trying to teach me how to fly fish. Because I used to get the you know, when the lads were doing a bit of training, he used to bring me down to this pond that was on the hotel where we were staying. And he had this thing where he used to grab me by the hand, grab this hand, and he'd literally show me the fly fishing thing. And there used to be a bank of photographers sometimes over this way, you know, taking pictures of us. And me mortified he'd grip me hand in that one and this one, and he'd be dragging it through whatever they do. I don't know what they do with the fly fishing thing. I never got it. I didn't like it. Yeah. And there was people taking photographs of me doing it. So that's, Jesus, never caught anything anyway.
What do you think his point was? What was he trying to teach you? Tactics? Or
well, no, nothing to do with football either. And I used to think, you know, I don't know what you're doing this with me for. I don't even like fishing. You know, do it with someone who likes fishing. You know, but he was I was just trying to teach me something that he knew I knew nothing about.
What made him special, certainly in Ireland, was he was a success and he qualified for competitions. But what made him qualify for competitions was his personality, I think, his knowledge on the game, but the fact that everybody loved him. I said players who played for him, I certainly did, and other players have said so. And I think the story that I always remember was when we were playing in Belfast, and the fans behind the goal were giving him dogs abuse. Not behind the goal, sorry, behind the dugout. They were giving him yards, giving him dogs abuse, and he took a cigarette out, he put it in his mouth, and he leant up to the fence and asked somebody if they got a light. And there's about 30 or 40 blokes who couldn't wait to get their hands in the pocket to give him a light, and they all stopped giving him abuse. And he just lit it up, said cheers, and turned around. You just had to like him. He was just a brilliant fella.
Was that kind of the essence of it, that charm, that persona, and it swept the whole country away at the time, didn't it?
First of all, it swept the dressing room away.
Yeah.
And then what followed, you know, media bought into it as well and had to. And then, you know, interesting to see my own mother have a picture of him up there beside John F. Kennedy and the Pope and whoever else, you know. He just came into everybody's homes and everybody's hearts because of his mannerisms, his attitude and his down-to-earth approach to everything we were doing. And you must also look back at Ireland, you know, in terms of where it was as a nation in the 80s, the early to mid-80s was a tough time, lots of emigration, no prospects. And suddenly this man made us all feel better about ourselves. And you know, he's many endearing legacies, but the one I think that I can explain the best is what he meant to the people. Because here I am 30-odd years later, and people still stop me now and say, thanks for the Italian 90, thanks for the great times with Jack. And even now, thinking about it, I kind of get a bit emotional about it. It is astonishing. You know, nobody stops the 66 players in England like that. You know, and they won the thing. But what we achieved, some might argue, well, we didn't win anything, but I think what we achieved in being accepted as something that had really been positive for the country was huge. And it was, OK, down to results and down to how the whole thing went, but in general terms, it was down to him. He was
it was something, and we're still, as you say, we're still talking about it all these years later. A great mileage for you, though, in fairness.
Yeah, but you look, there were great times, I'll never forget.
And they captured it so well, didn't they? Niall, thanks for that. It's a great note to sign off on. If you have been moved by the film earlier on, or any of the stories we've been hearing about Jack, please do support our Donate for Dementia campaign, which we are rounding off tonight. A reminder, text MEMORY to 50300 to donate €4. My thanks again to Niall for telling his side of the story. I'm off to dig out my Italian 90s sticker album. We'll leave the last word to Mick. Good night.
It's just a great time to be involved with Ireland, with football, and it's because of Jack. It was because of him, and we all owe him a lot of our careers and a lot of the stuff we've got to have our lives that have helped us make us better. We owe Jack that. I do, for one.